Hi, I'm Matt Vilisak, VP of Product for Security here at Jamf. Today, I'm really excited to share with you a new solution we call Jamf Trusted Access. Now, Trusted Access is designed to keep your organization's data protected while keeping your users productive from anywhere. So let's dive in. So we're going to cover Trusted Access in 5 sections. First, what is Trusted Access? What problems does it solve? And what are the 3 pillars of Trusted Access? We're going to talk about how it works and then how you adopt Trusted Access into your organization. So with that, let's get started. So what is Trusted Access? So Trusted Access is a new solution that is uniquely Jamf because it pulls together our full suite of management and security products and their technologies to address 2 of our customers' most pressing challenges. 1, protecting organizational data wherever it exists. And 2, enabling productivity from anywhere. So let's dive into each of these in a little more detail. So it should be no surprise to anyone, but data has left your office. Every day, there's one fewer server in an IT closet somewhere spinning away, as most applications and data have already moved to the cloud. Meanwhile, access methods and controls are fragmented and differ based upon the application and where the data actually lives. So this means that company data can leak on devices that, while being accessed by a trusted user, that device may not actually meet the most basic security requirements to ensure that that downloaded and accessed data isn't lost or stolen. So why is this? Why does this happen? And it's because ensuring that only trusted users and devices are able to access all of the data that they're trying to get to without impacting end user productivity is really hard to get right. There's a lot of different solutions out there trying to pull these together from different vendors, but it's very hard to make it all work cohesively. So we believe through our Trusted Access solution that we can make company data accessible to only trusted users and secure devices in a way that is effortless for end users, all while thwarting and making it very difficult for attackers to get at your most sensitive data. 2, hybrid work. And this should, again, be no surprise to anyone that hybrid work is here to stay. Even before the pandemic, organizations were tapping into workforces that were outside of their core geographic location to win the battle to find top talent. And many organizations have field workers that just don't sit behind the desk now or pre-pandemic, but they still need more than ever access to data to complete their work efficiently. And no matter where employees work, the importance of device choice and for being productive has never been more important, with 89% of respondents willing to take a pay cut to have their device of choice. So we have seen that delivering high performance, secure, and seamless access to data is now an essential and expected IT service across all common device compute platforms. To that end, we believe that users must be productive and secure no matter where they are and no matter what app or service they're trying to use to complete their work. And again, the Trusted Access solution is built to help solve this problem. So with those 2 problems in mind, let's talk about like what Trusted Access is from the view of its 3 core foundational pillars. 1 is sanctioned devices only. Data access is restricted to only managed or user-enrolled devices, meaning you have some form of management on a device to recognize that it is sanctioned versus an unsanctioned device. Second, safe devices only. You need to make sure that those devices are protected from threat. And if threat has gone through or the device is otherwise risky, you provide risk-based control to company data to make sure that a risky device does not have access to sensitive data resources. And finally, it's got to be loved by users. It's never going to work if there's too many hoops for the user to have to jump through. It needs to be seamless and integrated and needs to include all of your applications, not just some that are in the cloud or some that are on-prem, but anywhere. So let's dive into each of these in a little bit more detail. So there are 2 classes of devices that are in the sanctioned devices only concept. those that are permitted or sanctioned, and obviously those that are not. Now, you'd expect us, being here at Jamf, that we would support iPhones, iPads, and Macs. And sure enough, of course we do. These could be BYO-enrolled devices or institutionally owned devices. Either way, they are sanctioned devices through one of our Jamf MDMs. Now, you can't have a trusted access solution, though, without supporting all the other devices. So while Jamf doesn't provide device management tooling for these other device platforms, we do support understanding if an Android or PC device is sanctioned or not for the sake of being able to allow access or not. Now, the next class of devices are those that should not have access. These include things like a spouse's laptop, that workstation that's in a hotel lobby that you log into and then forget to log out of, a hacker's device where a hacker may have your credentials and have phished you to get those credentials. But the whole point being, if your device is not sanctioned, even if you're a trusted user or an untrusted user with valid credentials, unless you're on a trusted sanctioned device, you cannot get access to sensitive data. That is pillar number one. Right, so on to pillar number two, safe devices only. Now, just because a device is sanctioned doesn't mean that it's safe. So we help keep devices safe through the Trusted Access solution in 4 ways. So first up is active threat prevention. We have on-device and in-network protection capabilities to protect that device from outside attack. Second, we have continuous risk assessments that is constantly looking for a risky behavior or risky profile of the device. So take, for example, that an outdated OS or a new OS release. The user may be protected from our active threat protection capabilities in that they don't have malware or anything really malicious on their device, but a new OS just rolled out that has a lot of critical vulnerabilities. Now, all of a sudden, that device is now vulnerable to some form of attack, and that represents some form of risk profile because some previously undisclosed and unknown vulnerabilities are now out in the wild, which represents an increased risk. So we're continuously evaluating risk across multiple areas and categories, one of which is, of course, OS versions. So then, taking that OS version awareness, taking that risk policy, we then are able to determine what that device should have access to. Now, a risky device alone, like for the device, it's not a big deal because a device is just a hunk of metal, plastic, and silicon. But the data that device has access to is really what IT organizations are worried about. And so what you can do is you can define your own risk definition across various categories to create risk levels for all your devices, and then define what risk level is tolerable for your various applications. So you have risk-based access controls into your sensitive data. And then finally, when it comes to remediation, so we try to prevent as many threats as we can. If we detect one, we try to remediate it automatically. But in some cases, we can't do it all, or the software cannot do everything that we want it to. So we require users to do some work to fix things. In those cases, we send notifications and use in-app messaging to help users understand what they need to do to make their device go back into a safe and protected state. Okay, so that's pillar 2. Final pillar, last but not least, is that the overall experience needs to be loved by end users. You need to have seamless connectivity to any app from anywhere without having to jump through hoops, relog in a constant time, many times lose connections to get connected and stay connected. And a big part of being loved from your end users is that they trust the solution. One of the names we call it trusted access. And a big part of trust is privacy awareness and being respective of an end user's privacy. Now, we believe that the limits of what we should do for security goes as far as the underlying management mode permits. So, for example, on a BYO device, IT administration has no remit or concern over personal apps and personal data. And that should be completely off limits to IT administration just by design. So leveraging that security and privacy model established by Apple, we lean into that with trusted access to make sure that we strike a modern balance between usability, privacy, and security. Now, here at Jamf, and I'm sure shared by many of you here, we firmly believe that Apple greatly values user experience. However, we also know that not all users can or want to use Apple devices all the time. Remember that device choice statistic we saw a few slides ago. So instead, we've worked really hard to take that user-first experience from Apple and bring it and deliver it to other platforms so that users who may be on a non-Apple platform still have a unified and consistent experience when accessing data and applications and getting their work done. All right, so now with that covered, let's go a little bit deeper and see how it all works. So from a high level, first of all, we have company endpoints. These again are your devices that become sanctioned one way or the other, whether it's device-wide managed or user enrolled, you have management of some form. And also as part of that process, Jamf security tooling is deployed as well. Now with those components deployed, and in consideration of device ownership modes and the privacy concerns we just talked about, either all device traffic or some device business-only traffic is routed dynamically through the Jamf Security Cloud. Now, it is through the Jamf Security Cloud that these users are granted access to company apps and workloads, no matter if they are on-prem or in the cloud. Ultimately, what this results in is something really cool. It's what can best be described as a global private routing fabric. And what it basically does is it shields your organization's devices and applications from outside attack. And it creates a path for only your sanctioned and safe devices to connect to your most sensitive company data resources. Anyone outside of that routing fabric can't even see your most sensitive applications, even if they are on the public internet. So check out my session from last year to learn more about how Jamf connects your company endpoints with corporate data through our Zero Trust network access technologies. Okay, so let's take a look at how this works on a sanctioned and secure Mac OS device. First thing we will do, we deploy Jamf MDM. Now on a Mac, this is typically done through Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager for zero-touch deployment. Next, we deploy Jamf Connect, also zero-touch. Connect brings your identity provider to your Mac, which enables seamless onboarding from your identity provider of choice to automatically create local user accounts and keeping that user's credentials and password in sync from that point forward between the Mac and the IDP. So there's a lot to love about Connect, and I would highly recommend checking out these two sessions from this year's JNUC, as they really help to explain some of the great workflows you can unlock with Jamf Connect. Next, you deploy Jamf Protect, also zero-touch deployed through Jamf MDM. So this keeps Macs safe from malware and suspicious activity while keeping an eye on device compliance state. And new this year, we're introducing Jamf Protect Network Threat Prevention. And this is our new DNS over HTTPS-based service that integrates natively with Mac OS to protect endpoints from network-based attacks. We are really excited about this new capability, so be sure to check out these sessions to learn more about it because it is a real game changer when it comes to Mac OS network security. Finally, with the device sanctioned and secured, the device uses Jamf Private Access to connect to all company apps and data in a secure, zero-trust manner. All other activity goes straight out to the internet, maximizing the device's internet performance because all of the security attestation and validation has already occurred in previous steps. So let's see a demo of this all in action. First up, you see a brand new Mac device being onboarded, and through Apple Business Manager, we've automatically been routed to our Jamf Pro instance. So we already are getting MDM deployed on this device. We're now logging in using our identity provider credentials, and this is basically allowing us to create the local user account on the device. So I log in this case with my Okta credentials, username and password that was issued to me when I joined the company. And that is going ahead and creating the local account based upon that. We're also able to provide some great onboarding guides to give you an idea of what the user should expect to go through and complete their onboarding of their Mac into the service. So all wonderful stuff there. And This should be very familiar to most of us as far as now enrolling this device into remote management and MDM and Jamf Pro with Jamf Connect all set up as well doing its thing. So we're seeing that we're finishing this process up of setting up your Mac, and we're going to get a screen where now Jamf Connect is kicking in to create that account that you just created or that you authorized through Okta and your IDP. And now the account's created. Now, what's great is we've now automatically provisioned Jamf Trust so that the VPN and networking capabilities are already set up. We've also shown here that Okta Verify has been authorized by the end user in a previous step. So first thing we're going to do, try to access an internal intranet website. It's a cafe website for Wanda's. Awesome restaurant. It worked just fine, got to the menu. Now I'm going to try to access my email. I bring that up, and the first thing I see is that it's not authorized, but here comes my IDP and single sign-on and Okta FastPass to save the day. All I do is scan my fingerprint without typing a single username or password. I am now authorized into my email on this sanctioned device, and as long as it has been safe, because as you saw, the device's security is secured with a modern version of OS and everything, I'm able to get into my email and start syncing right away. If I disable private access and I try to do stuff with my email, I've now simulated that I'm no longer using the trusted network. I'm now looking like a just regular old device according to Exchange. And so if I try to do things like write a new email and send that out while private access is disabled, what you'll see is that that is just not allowed. Exchange is going to deny that connection because it's unable to determine that we are a trusted device by a trusted user to be able to use mail. So I'll go ahead and turn private access back on. I'll try to send my email again. And without me doing anything, you'll see it will send, and then it will be received within a couple seconds because now that trusted network path has been established between that device and Exchange in the cloud. Now, another great feature of this demonstrating network threat prevention is I've now turned off my VPN. So, and this device is at a home network. And I went to icar.org, which is a test spam or threat, a malware site, and it got blocked. And now this is really valuable because you can see how quickly that happened without any VPN running and without any agent really running on the device. This is all built in using Apple's native DNS over HTTPS technology. It works in Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, and I'm now protected from network threat. I'm now going to log into my Okta dashboard where I could look at more applications. And what you'll see here is, again, no username, no password, a fingerprint scan in Chrome. So great user experience for passwordless authentication. Now here, remember my private access is off. I'm going to try to access my email through a web browser. Can't do it. It says I need to turn on private access. So I go ahead and do that. I've started my VPN, and sure enough, email is going to load up. Again, easy login to be able to just use my biometrics. And I'm now signed in and I have access to that same email box that I have now locally through the Mail app. So that's the macOS demo. What we showed there is a device coming on board from a brand new out of the shrink wrap state, going through the connect process to get your local account created, and then setting up private access automatically, and some of the great passwordless experiences that you could realize through an IDP like Okta and Okta's FastPass technology. Right, so now let's look at BYO. So that was a Mac. Let's look at an iOS device, in this case, an iPhone. Now, assume I have a out-of-the-box iPhone that I bought Apple retail, and I've just set it up personally. I've set up a bunch of personal apps. I put my personal mail accounts on there, and I'm just going along using my phone. Now, I want to be able to access my work stuff. I don't want to get a second device. I want to be able to access my contacts, my email, my calendar, and a couple apps, say Salesforce or Slack, on my personal phone. So I've been told that I just have to user enroll my device, and we'll see this in a minute. But what ends up happening is the device creates a whole separate logical partition at the data layer that creates a whole separate, effectively logical device on the same physical device, where my managed apps and even managed accounts like my mail, contacts, and calendars for my work are completely separated logically from my personal applications. So this means that my IT administrators cannot see any of my apps that are on the device. They can't see any of the data that's happening on my personal side of the device. All they have remit to are those green applications and contacts and calendars. And Apple's done some amazing work to make it so you have a shared UX or UI experience with mail, contacts, and calendars where you have a single application, but you're actually dealing with two completely separate accounts behind the scenes. And also, Apple's been innovating a lot on the DLP policies. So things like copy and paste between personal and managed apps has really come a long way in the last couple of years. So those are critical components to be able to create a nice separation between personal and work. And that's enabled through user enrollment. If you want to learn more, check out this BYOD session that I've called up here. It is a great session about everything that we're doing with BYO and really leaning into the great technology that Apple has been providing through user enrollment. Now that is on device. Now it gets really interesting with trusted access when you start to attach networking into this whole picture. Because out of the box, user enrollment just separates the data at rest. It says these applications, the personal applications are separate from these managed apps, and that allows IT to have full control of wiping that managed app data without seeing anything on the personal side and keeping things nicely and securely separated. That isn't the case with networking out of the box, but this is where trusted access comes in. This is where we bind the Jamf trusted access and Jamf private access product to managed devices or managed apps and managed apps only. Therefore, if you try to access company resources and data from a managed app, it will take a secure networking path through the Jamf Security Cloud to be able to reach those company apps and data. And again, those could be in the cloud, on-prem, anywhere. However, if using the same credentials and the same maybe unmanaged applications on the same phone, I'm actually not able to get to those applications and that data because because those personal apps do not have any access to the privileged networking and VPN that is created by trusted access. So this means that if I try to log in, have perfectly valid credentials, the services that I'm trying to connect to will treat that logical side, the personal side of the device, as completely untrusted and unsanctioned. And that is a really powerful separation when you're able to separate both data at rest and in motion from managed applications at rest and in motion, and where we bind the networking and the on-device storage together for managed apps. So let's see this all in action. So here we have a brand new iPhone. I've gone in and I've set up some personal apps, but now I want to add my work account. I'm going to do what I've done at all my other previous jobs. Gone into Exchange. I've to create a new account. I type in my email address and sign in. And this is all looking pretty promising. I'm able to get like a login screen. I type in my username. I type in my password, perfectly valid password. In this case, I'm using Face ID because it's stored. But I get called out that, nope, you can't access this. And this is because there's a network policy saying that if traffic's not coming from Jamf's security cloud, we do not allow login into that service. So, okay, I'm going to follow the instructions my IT team gave me, which is to go to VPN and device management, sign into work and school. I type in my exact same email and hit continue. And this is going to start the onboarding process into user enrollment. And here we have the same Okta credential experience where I'm logging in with my Okta username and password. That looks all good. So I log in through my MDM, and now I'm creating a managed Apple ID through federation with Okta and Microsoft Azure AD. So I'm logging in there again, and now my managed Apple ID has been created, which is awesome. And now what's going to happen is I'm going to enroll into user enrollment. So that previous screen, if you were to look at it, says, hey, user, this is creating a user enrolled, a secure part of your on your device that is just for work. They can't touch your personal app. So great communication to the end user there. Now, just like on the Mac, you now see that the email account has been provided and pushed and configured. We're getting a couple apps installed like Jamf Trust. We're getting Okta Verify and Chrome, which is going to be our managed browser, all getting pushed down to me. So we're waiting for Chrome to install, but also part of my instructions, the first thing my IT team tells me to do is to activate Jamf Trust. And what we do here, we sign in with Okta. We follow the same login steps that we were used to a second ago. Now, in this case, what's happening is we've told Okta that we want to register this device with Okta Verify into the Okta backend. So launching Jamf Trust opens Okta Verify. Okta Verify sets up all of its FastPass single sign-on extension for seamless access from this point forward. So now, from now on, all I have to do is use my face to log into most applications, like you just saw there. So that just authorized me, that's enrolled me into Okta as a new device. It's registered my user and device, and now it's also authenticated Jamf Trust. So you now have all of your identity and access and security done within a couple seconds. So this has created all the networking paths and all the trust associations between managed apps on the device and networking. That's all been set up. I open up email from that managed account, that managed configuration profile, and I'm asked to log in. Now that was really fast because everything's passwordless now and just move it along. And I now have all my email within my mail app. Now, I'm going to show, so like I mentioned, we're using Chrome as our managed browser in this case. If I try to access that cafe website from a personal browser or a personal app in this case, you will see it will not load because it can't be found. This Safari has not been set as a trusted browser and trusted service for accessing data resources, but Chrome has. You may have noticed the VPN icon show up at the top. That's binding our private access infrastructure to Chrome such that Chrome is able to reach that site. You will also see that from DLP controls, I can't actually share any of this website with any other apps that are on the device from a personal side. You'll also see if I try to copy some text out and go into Mail and paste that within a personal iCloud account, I'll get this DLP control saying, nope, you cannot paste that in here. However, this is what's really cool about some of the Apple innovations. If I switch that to my manage account and I paste, boom, it pastes in. So what we just saw here is a device that has gone from a completely untrusted, unsanctioned position into becoming sanctioned, validated as safe through the Jamf Trust application. We've activated Okta Verify in such a way that we've now realized passwordless authentication on this device. And we've seen how DLP works and how you can get access to applications, both web applications and email, through managed devices only. Okay, so how do you adopt all this? First thing you do, you user or device enroll all of your devices via some form of device management or MDM. Next, you deploy and configure Jamf security products. This could be Jamf Connect, Jamf Protect, and Jamf Trust. Finally, you work with your identity and networking teams to lock down applications to require Jamf device attestation. In this case, that means, in most cases, it means restricting access to applications based upon Jamf's network infrastructure IPs, or using other forms of conditional access to only allow devices that have been attested by Jamf as sanctioned and safe to be able to access resources. Now, there's a lot of detail to go through and a lot to understand to set up trusted access, and we have detailed guides to help you to get there at trusted.jamf.com. So, in review, data needs to be protected from outside attack. Because data is everywhere. Access and productivity must be seamless from anywhere. The Trusted Access solution is delivered and offered through Jamf's management and security products through an intelligent way of bringing them all together. And the result is a private cloud-based network of trusted devices and users only. Everyone else stays out. And finally, we're really excited about the BYOD capabilities and offering that Trusted Access unlocks to give a native look and feel using OS tooling and experiences. So with that, thank you for attending, and I look forward to hearing how you and your organization adopts Trusted Access. Have a great day.